Hello and welcome to this rather fascinating episode of the Paranormal Concept Show. I'm your host Paul Rook, and tonight I am joined as always by my amazing co-hosts, both Kerry Greenaway and Richard Clements. Hello guys.
Hello there.
Hi there.
Hi, are you alright? How's your weekend's been and stuff?
Well, it's been
Haven't
very
done a
quiet.
lot,
I was going to say, I haven't gone anywhere, done anywhere, seen anybody. It's very novel, actually, staying in and getting jobs done around the house. I mean, gosh.
Yes, I've got a very clean flat at the moment.
I've got the gardening
Awesome.
done.
Wish I could say the same. I've been doing some research for tonight's show, and I've got my shades on. I've got my black suit, my black tie. You know, I know Richard's got his outfit as well.
Yep,
So for the
that's
Men in
right.
Black. Yeah, so we're ready for the Men in Black. And I've watched Men in Black 1, 2, and 3, and International. So I know all about the Men in Black.
Awesome.
So yeah, so let's go, shall we?
That's what I like to hear. Good research there, Paul, is all I'm saying.
If I only knew it was meant to be that easy.
You mean that's not where we're going with the show tonight?
Not what I had in mind, and I'm pretty sure that's not what Richard had in mind either.
So I got dressed up like one of the Blues. So
Yeah.
I got dressed up as one of the members of the Blues Brothers for nothing then.
Well,
Great
that's
show.
the Blues, isn't it? We're doing Men in Black. So I thought, you know, yeah, good movie choice there. I thought, yeah, well away with that one.
They are brilliant movies, I will say that. The first one, though, really freaked me out because it was like cockroaches, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Cockroach Man and lots of cockroaches, which makes, like, cockroaches, like, literally make my skin crawl on the best of days. Not that I've ever seen one in real life. I've only ever seen them in the zoo. But, no, I'm a beetle phobic. I don't know what the term for beetle phobic is, but, yeah, beetles are the one thing that makes me go, ooh! And spiders. In fact, insects. In fact, I will go as insects, but, you know. Oh,
The
dear.
film memorable.
Insects in general, hey, yeah. Oh, you wouldn't have liked it when I was living in Australia. You used to have cockroaches everywhere.
Yeah.
In my shed, mainly. They used to live in there.
No. I've always said, actually, that's one country, well, any hot country I have trouble with because of the insect factor.
Now
Oh,
they just go around the supermarkets buying all the toilet roll.
Yeah. I'm well suited for UK living is all I can say.
Tell me about it.
So, guys, let me ask you a question then. Where do you sit? Because this ties very much into ufology, the ufology world. So let's get our perspective on the alien situation to start with. Where do you sit with the alien thing, Paul?
I'm quite I do believe there is alien life out there. Whether or not it is actually the Greys or anything like that, I don't know. But when I talk about life on other planets, I don't just mean humanoid life. I would also go as far as saying like bacterias and other viruses and stuff like that are all on these other planets, and they're all a different life form to ourselves. So, yeah, no, I'm a believer of life on other planets.
It's the same here. I do believe that there is sort of life, microbial life, or sort of more sort of like developed life. But as for the ufology, you know, them visiting us, I still can't get my head around. It's the distance that's involved and stuff, and nuts and bolts sort of spacecraft and stuff. I mean, I'm still pretty much on the fence about that.
I'm the same as you guys. I don't discount the fact that there could be life on another planet, other planets out there, in any form. It's how they get from there to here to then just do some of the things that they're supposed to do, like probing and stuff like that. That stretches my rationality a step too far. Why come all the way just to probe somebody? And I know there's that argument, isn't there?
Let's face it,
specimen
we would do it.
collecting. Yeah, I know that's, you know, if we send a probe to Mars, he's collecting samples. I get that. I do get that. And back in the day when they were doing exploration on this planet, there was specimen, you know, they would collect specimens and stuff like that. But I think if you've got all that technology to come from that, planet millions of miles away to this planet, I think, you wouldn't necessarily need to do the actual physical. I don't know. I just can't get my head around that. For me, rationally, it doesn't make sense to me.
Well, I think we would do the same. I mean, if we did encounter another alien species, we'd want to learn about that species completely, and that would include, when they died, we'd cut them up and learn about their anatomy, because we'd want to do that. We'd want to know what makes them tick. Are they the same as us? Are they carbon-based life forms? Are they something else? We've got all these questions.
Yeah, because we simply just don't know. I mean, but when we talk about an alien life and sort of them actually visiting us, we are still actually sort of. I think a lot of people still find it difficult to get it out of our sort of like frame of reference and the way we think. I mean, who knows if they are visiting there? Who knows what their agenda is?
Yeah.
I mean, there is that school of thought that they've been here for like thousands of years and they live amongst us as well. But, we won't even go down that road. But Men in Black comes off the back of that, doesn't it? It comes off the back of people having an experience like a sighting or an experience with an alien aircraft and then being warned not to talk about it.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
And this is where the Men in Black come into that. So it's for me, it's one of those where somebody's taken a theory, which it is a theory, we everyone's looking for disclosure, and oh God, even in this day and age, this situation we're seeing today is very is being taken and saying, oh, they're locking us down because it's going to be full disclosure and aliens are going to come out, or their cloaking devices are going to come off and the skies are going to be full. No, I don't believe that for a moment. But it's a whole world of people, and I'm not being derogatory to people at all, because I've never experienced it, so I don't know what to make of it when I'm looking from an outsider in. So when someone talks about an experience they've had, or their abduction experience or something like that, I find it very hard to understand it from an experience point of view, because I've never experienced it. Disclaimer, would never want to, just saying. But I find it very difficult, and I kind of read things about this and look at footage, and none of it's compelling enough for me to think, there's something to that.
Yeah, but then, if someone does have a genuine experience, and, I mean, say, for example, the case of, is it Travis Walton? The Fire in the Sky story.
Yeah.
Oh, right, yeah.
It's quite a famous case.
Very.
And, he's turned around and said, this is what happened to me.
Yeah.
But people are still turning around and saying, well, we still think it's you after 15 minutes of fame. But if it did genuinely happen, what has that guy got to do to convince you that it was a real incident and he was abducted by aliens?
But it's the same as any paranormal incident that you have. You take it on face value for what the person says happened to them. Even in poltergeist cases, unless you're there witnessing it with them, and then that means you're part of that experience, all you can do is look at it from an outside perspective and ask the questions. Now, with the Travis Walton case, very famous case, isn't it? And well documented, and not just by himself, but by the people that were with him that went back and tried to search for him and actually experienced that, part of that as well. Yeah. They've passed lie detector tests, which are questionable in themselves to a degree, multiple tests as well. It does create a fascinating case study.
It sure does.
But from an outsider looking in, you can only take it on face value.
Yes, because at the end of the day, and like we've discussed before, these individuals, this sort of happens to. It is, despite and how unpleasant it may be, it is just that, a personal experience.
Yeah, there is lots of ways that you could look at the Men in Black conspiracy, for want of a better word.
And I mean, I don't know, going back to the Travis Walton case, I don't know if they had a Man in Black scenario, which you would think...
No.
Which you would think, when we looked at some of the cases, they weren't that big, in all honesty. Do you know what I mean? In regards to something like that. I don't know enough about the Travis Walton case to know if they had a Man in Black come along and say, oh, you can't talk about this, you know, and threatening and creating... you know, phone line, crank calls, that sort of thing that other people have experienced. I don't know. He may well have. I don't know.
Yeah.
I'd have to look into it. I may well actually do that, actually. I don't know. But that side of it hasn't actually, in my understanding, come forward on that.
No, I don't think it has, and I don't remember that ever happening. But you know, I could be wrong. I mean, I was looking at a case the other day for a blog that I was writing, so that's sort of why it's come up in my mind and used that as an example. But no, I don't remember ever reading or seeing any stories involving the Men in Black with that one.
No, and I think with the Travis Walton case, what he's actually sort of said is it. I mean, it is just that span of 3 or 4 days, and he was actually missing, you know, and he's never embellished beyond that actual experience. Yeah,
it's always remained consistent.
Yeah.
As has the testimony from the people that were with him when it all happened. So it is fascinating to me that a case that high profile and talked about for years may not have had a Man in Black scenario or Men in Black encounter when other cases have come up where they have had a Men in Black encounter. So what makes it different? Or are we just not knowing enough about that case and he did? There's that possibility. I don't know.
There is that possibility. I mean, even if it did happen, you know, did they take it seriously or did they just think it's just another crank call and just ignored it? But, you know, it depends on what way you look at the Men in Black as well. Because if you think of them as maybe time travellers, I know this is skipping ahead a little bit in the show, but if you thought of them as time travellers, in this timeline, they just haven't got going back to that point yet. So they may, in the future, go back to change the future. There you go, that blows your mind, doesn't it?
Okay.
At this moment in time, they haven't gone back yet. But in, say, another 20, 30 years, they might go, well, actually, oh dear, we forgot that one. We'll go back and change it. So
I think they might have picked that up because that was quite a long time ago that old Travis, poor old Walton, did, you know, got his experience. Serious oversight there, if that's the case.
If they're time travellers, they've got the time. What's the rush?
Well, there you go.
There you go. That's
it. That could change entire history.
Exactly. So that then also leads off to the alternate reality as well.
Oh my God.
Here we go.
Oh my God. Right. Well, anyway, let's have a look at the phenomena before we get down into theories on this one. Right. Because me and Paul end up coming up to, we end up at loggerheads on these particular topics quite often on the old time travel alternate dimension kind of theories.
That's because I understand the quantum mechanics of it and Kerry doesn't.
Basically, Paul, you just watch Doctor Who, don't you?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. So
in Back to the Future, but anyway, you carry on.
See, the other thing when I was looking at this was it is a world filled with the conspiracy theory. They love it. It seems, from what I found, to be predominantly Western.
Yes.
Yes, and predominantly US as well.
And love us dearly, we do tend to follow the US.
Mm-hmm.
You know, what's good enough for America is good enough for the UK, right?
Oh, of course.
And it could just be a case of another government agency that no one knows about.
There do tend to be, though, when looking at the accounts, I mean, there does seem to be two things. There seems to be ones that you could class as government agents.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And ones that are a bit weird and a bit more batty. kind of people
like
that
American locals.
are
I'm joking.
that are not necessarily, bearing in mind our audience, Paul, that are not necessarily what you.
Joking. And
Yeah.
loads of
Uh-huh. That don't seem to be, and I'm going to say it, human. They are dressed as humans and are in human suits, as it were. But there's something odd. There's something weird about them that people that encounter them have got. It's weird. And then there's also the amnesia that happens when they've seen the stranger ones. But it does seem to break down when I was looking at accounts. The two sort of types of encounter with Men in Black. I love the fact that they wear black suits, and it's like if you're going to have an encounter, and then a man in a black suit, with a black hat and a black, Cadillac car or whatever it's called, Chevrolet or whatever the cars they were, pulls up, and then you. In this day and age, if that happened, you'd be like, "Oh, come on, mate, change it up. I know what you are." You know what I mean? It's like, come on, keep with the program.
You rename them like Men in Tartan or something,
It's very
through the shorts.
straight away, though. It gives you a sinister overtone.
Yes.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Because everyone that seems to encounter these orders, sort of like the written down and encounters, and everyone will always sort of tend to point out they're odd. There's always, if these people actually exist, they can't get it right. They've always sort of, it's not even the sort of Men in Black. I mean, because people have sort of come across sort of military personnel as well. But these sort of military personnel, there's always something sort of odd about them, like their insignia they can't recognise, or, in the wrong places and stuff. There's sort of, it seems they've almost got it, but not quite.
Yeah.
So do you think then they're just pretending to be army servicemen and women?
Well, that is one theory that's been put forward, isn't it? Is that it's an alien form that's trying to copy human form to put the fear of God in you so you don't talk about it, or they are the more government type people. That's why you get the two camps on this. You get the two kind of Men in Black experiences.
Yeah.
Because you've got like the real life government types that, are a lot more serious, and then you've got which does bring you down into complete conspiracy, because they're the ones that you tend to have the phones being tapped or interfered with and stuff like that.
Surely, though, I mean, when people talk about alien abductions, they always talk about missing time, because obviously they just have this lapse in memory for whatever it's like, an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, whatever. But surely if it was the aliens coming down to try and discourage us from talking about whatever abduction experience they had, surely with their technology it'd just be so much easier to wipe their mind.
Well, you would have thought something like that, because these Men in Black have been around for a while, and if that is their agenda, to stop us from talking or to stop witnesses from talking, they're not doing a very good job.
No.
Well, they certainly aren't. Because people are talking, and people are, reporting it. I remember talking to a friend of mine, and he was talking about a YouTuber that he watched, and apparently all about UFOs and stuff like that, and disclosure and stuff like that. It was this guy, this YouTuber, and he said he's got a Man in Black waiting outside, or sitting outside his house, and he went down to confront him, and it drove off. And it didn't have any plate, or we had American government plates and stuff like that. And then his channel got shut down, and it felt very paranoid. Do you know what I mean? When we was talking about it, it all felt incredibly paranoid. And whether or not that was real or not, or whether that was made up to bring a media hype to his channel for further promotion, I get very suspicious. I get very suspicious of things like this. But going back to, they have been around for a long time. And when we, how far back do they go, though, Richard?
Well, I sort of, and there is an account that actually sort of goes back to sort of 1947 with a Howard Dahl. And, and 1947 is an interesting case. It's an interesting date in itself, because for those in the ufology field, and they will also recognise that as the date of the Roswell incident.
Right.
Yeah.
Did
So
this happen on the same day?
no, but it's
Just
the
the same
same year.
year?
Yeah, so it seems sort of like generally sort of like the Roswell incident is sort of has ushered in the modern ufology age. There were accounts before that, but this year also saw the sort of arrival of what became known as the Men in Black.
But round the Roswell incident, and again, I'll hold my hands up. I'm not well versed in ufology world. Were there Men in Black encounter? I know they were military, but they did seem all very normal military encounters.
Yeah, yes, the Roswell sort of like account. I mean, it is just the witnesses to the alleged wreckage, and the military were involved, and it's just standard military. That sort of story is basically civilian military. As far as I'm aware, there was no other sort of like mysterious Men in Black or sort of other people involved in it.
Okay, well, go back to the one you were talking about, the Harold Dahl case. What happened there?
He was alleged to have witnessed a UFO report and to witness some actual aliens, and then he was subsequently visited by men in black suits to warn him to keep quiet about his experiences he had. I mean, it's very sort of like sketches. It's quite a small sort of account of it, but that is widely regarded as sort of like the ushering of the Men in Black.
Paul?
Okay, yeah. He also apparently took photographs of the aircraft that he saw above his boat, I believe, wasn't it? And he showed his supervisor because the supervisor was sceptical. And then he was like, okay, wow, that's interesting. So I'd be interested to see these photographs, to be honest.
Yeah. It is, yeah. This is where it becomes, though, isn't it? It's again, we go back to the paranormal world. We see a photograph of somebody that's taken something in the paranormal field, and we discount it very much so, don't we? Because we're looking at a photograph. So again, with the ufology world, someone will take a photograph or something, and you have to be the one who experiences it, because a photograph, we know. I mean, okay, 1947 maybe not so much, but these days it's very difficult, isn't it, to look at anything from a photograph and do it. But I'm the same as you. I'd like to see them. What I would make of them wouldn't be great quality photographs, though, would they? Because 1947.
No, they'd be more than likely black and white. But these would have been old film cameras, and to be quite honest, I'm a lot more sort of like impressed with older ufology photographs than modern ones, because what with modern technology and photoshopping and everything, it's very difficult to discern a modern sort of piece of video footage than an old piece of like film.
Well, that's
footage.
it. I mean, if you look at the Roswell photographs, the official line from the government was that it was a weather balloon.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But judging by the photos and looking at the photos, it looked very suspiciously like an aircraft of some sort. So while they come out with the air balloon, it was just a bit daft, really, I think.
But with that particular case, they were flying out of, weren't they developing a plane that could go under, if I remember rightly, radar and stuff, and it was made of that kind of material, so it could be a test flight that went wrong. So it's a weather balloon. Can't say, because we don't want it to leak out because of the Cold War and all that with the old, Russians and stuff like that. Even back then, there was that secrecy surrounding things. I mean, you've got to remember, 47 is not long after the wars, so you're going into a political minefield of particularly between the world. Political status was very in flux, wasn't it, at that time, and not stable at all, just coming off the back of that.
Yeah, but anyone with half a brain cell can see the difference in fabric between what a weather balloon looks like and what the aircraft looks like. They could have just said it was a new drone or something that they were testing.
But
They didn't have to go into details, but it's more believable if you said that than a weather balloon.
But it is actually known that there was a lot of high altitude balloon testing around the area. I mean, the Air Force were particularly, because this was coming into the start of the nuclear age, and they were sort of flying high altitude balloons to actually monitor sort of like explosions and possible nuclear tests coming from Russia. That they would get sort of recording equipment high up in the stratosphere to actually record this. And these sort of tests were top secret at the time. So, possibly...
It's almost like having a nuclear bomb go off and going, oops, sorry, I've just set fire to a box of matches. It just doesn't work.
But again, this happened in 1947. We're looking at it very much with modern eyes, with modern the modern technology we've got now. It's very difficult. We've said this time and time again. You have to put yourself in the time frame that it happened in and the knowledge that those things happened in. So what seems unbelievable to us today is not necessarily unbelievable back then.
Yes, because even sort of weather balloons back then, from what I can gather, they're sort of made from like aluminium type foil type sort of stuff. And a lot of civilians probably would not have come across that before. And if you found that lying around on the desert floor or sort of stuff, and it would have been odd to them. And you can quite possibly see how a story could evolve from that.
Yeah,
that's true. But going back to the Dahl case, the government did say it was a hoax, and later Dahl and Crimson, who was the supervisor guy, admitted as much. Now, were they got to? There's where the conspiracy comes in. Were they got to?
Yeah, difficult one.
And that's where conspiracy theory comes in, isn't it? It's like, oh, it was true, but they got too much pressure on them from the government, so they decided to change their story to, oh, it was a lie, it was a hoax. But that was like really where a lot of this has been born from. And since then, really, conspiracy theories have taken on a life of their own. And nowadays, nothing can happen in the world without a conspiracy theory about it. And people seem to ignore facts and only look at the tiny incy-wincy bits, join a lot of dots together and make a whole different thing without knowing all of the facts. And actually, sometimes not being allowed to know the facts. I mean, if this was a true encounter with ufologies, with a UFO, that Dahl experienced, then if it was real, as in an alien encounter or alien spaceship encounter, that then puts it into an incredibly scary scenario.
Yeah, I can see that, yeah.
If it's to do with government and it's to do with covering up new technology that they're testing or whatever, then I do sit in the camp of, I do believe some governments will have to keep certain things secret for the good of the populace.
Oh yeah,
absolutely. Yeah.
So any country's military will have secrets. I mean, that's part of how the military works and operates. I mean, that goes without saying.
Exactly. So either way, if it's aliens, incredibly scary scenario right there. If it's government, I can understand them putting pressure on somebody if they don't want that out there out there being spoken about, because it opens up questions from people that they may not want questions from.
Mm-hmm.
And then the problem is, from sort of like this main incident that we found, as I say, this is where sort of like conspiracy theory got born. This is like where but look where conspiracy theory has got us today. Like I said, you can't do anything these days without a massive. Oh gosh, you only have to look at you only have to look at the state of play today, and see how many different conspiracy theories there are out there about this one particular situation that the world is in at the moment. However that happened, we're having to deal with that situation. It doesn't do us any favours talking conspiracy theory about it. It just adds to the paranoia around the situation and distrust of governments.
And I think the thing is now is how quick these conspiracy theories come up. It's as if people are waiting for a situation to happen, and literally within hours you will have something floating around sort of cyberspace about it.
True.
Well, I mean, look at 9/11 as well. That was another one. The conspiracy theories were pretty much out there straight away.
Yeah, totally. Whether or not you agree with that, I didn't really bother with the research on that one, the 9/11, no more than I did the Princess Diana. Yes, I can sort of understand why people would think that, but it doesn't serve any purpose to believe it.
No, it's sort of more of a psychological effect. I mean, when something sort of happens that is out of our control, human nature can sort of make up and scenarios for them to accept it more, even if it is something as run as the mill as or someone dying in a run of the mill car crash, or Yeah.
I mean, I have to say, I love the films, the Men in Black films. Gonna hold my hands up, right? Old Will Smith Fran over here. I liked that view of it. I can actually believe that more than I can some of the conspiracy theories that are out there about Men in Black. Because if there are, say we have got aliens on this earth as well, it kind of makes sense that there'll be sort of like a governing body that would sort of like take care of that. So I kind of buy into that more than I would some of the other theories I've had. Now,
It would be nice.
It would be nice, wouldn't it, with their little forgetter things. Now, one of the main stories, I say stories, it's not really a story, accounts, should we say. We can't really talk anymore about Men in Black without looking at the Mothman Prophecies by John Keel, because actually that's where I know most of my information from. And I believe, Richard, you're the same on that, aren't you?
Yes, I have actually read the book, and it was a while ago, and I sort of came to the same sort of conclusions you did, Kerry. I mean, the start of the book, it's heavy going, and you sort of think, where is this leading? But it's one of those things, once you read it, think about it, you think, that was a good book after all. And it is sort of it's definitely a book I'm going to have to revisit.
Oh, most definitely. But I liked the way he started off with his own. He got lost on a road, broke down, and he went to a farmstead, knocked on the door, stormy night, raining and whatnot.
Yep.
And he said, out of that, a whole urban myth built up just because of him. So it shows how things can get possibly twisted. However, everything that happened in Point Pleasant around that time was incredibly strange. And he documents it, basically. He just says, this is what's alleged to have happened, and this is what's alleged to have happened. And it starts off with a series of accounts that starts to accumulate and builds up to a disaster. In the end of the book, spoiler alert, everybody. I
think it's well documented.
I think so too. I definitely do recommend anybody read the Mothman Prophecies for themselves, because it's particularly at the moment that's come to the fore quite a lot with Helia recently. Books have spun off from this, but that's sort of like one of the main sources of the Man in Black encounter, or strange person encounters, because there's a lot of other people in there that aren't Men in Black, but they're strange encounters, warning people not to talk. But it all gets all mixed up and shows that the ufology phenomenon doesn't seem limited to just seeing a light in the sky, Man in Black comes along, tells you not to talk. There seems to be other phenomena that goes on at the same time. It ties into cattle mutilation, dogs going missing, poltergeist activity. That would make an interesting study.
Oh, it certainly would. I mean, and the Point Pleasant incident is, it's something, I think a lot of people who will want to sort of like follow this subject up more should look into.
Definitely, but when I meant study, I meant the link between poltergeist phenomena and ufology sightings?
Yes, there has been even sort of some of the more famous sort of like poltergeist cases, the sort of like you read into them a bit, and you do actually find that there has been reports of what would be called ufology sort of sightings and stuff like that. So yeah, definitely.
So that would be an interesting case study. Now, back into D, I did actually try to look into whether or not two of the most famous cases in the UK, i.e. the Enfield haunting, and when I was researching 30 East Drive, whether or not there have been any ufology sightings around the time of their alleged poltergeist activity.
And did you find anything?
No.
Right.
That doesn't mean there wasn't any, I just couldn't find it.
Yeah, because usually these two fields, sort of like the poltergeist activity and stuff, will be more of the paranormal investigator, the ghost hunter sort of field, and ufology is sort of like a separate part of it. And even though sort of they are coming closer and closer together. I mean, you do get a crossover of people researching now. Back during the times of these cases actually happened, they probably would have been two totally separate sort of bodies of research.
Yeah.
But it would be interesting if you could somehow sort of find sort of a ufologist that knows all the cases and stuff like that from sort of like the Enfield area or London in general or Pontefract around the times these actual cases happened.
But why that would then centre on a specific location brings in a whole load of different questions, doesn't it?
Well, yeah.
It does, doesn't it? Because like, would it affect? Why is it affecting that particular one? People like the people in that one household. Surely, if that sighting was in that area, surely it would have a bigger, wider encompassing area. So more people would have experienced it as well. So it does raise a lot more questions, I think. But it's definitely something to look into.
But it's definitely, again, but isn't that the paranormal field, and paranormal using that as the umbrella term? That's the whole point of the paranormal field, isn't it? It tends to raise more questions in your head than it does answers.
Yeah, absolutely. It's just a shame we can't go back and like investigate that sort of theory, and actually get to talk to the people that were involved in that. Maybe do tests on them as well to see what their psychic ability was.
Oh, he's gone back on his little time travel machine, Richard.
Yeah.
Get yourself cards out.
I mean, those cases were years ago, so it would actually be nice to get first-hand evidence as opposed to, third or fourth-hand testimony.
I can understand where you're getting at, Paul, but I think that's all we've got now is the written documentation. These cases are very well established, and the documentation is what it is. I mean, I don't know quite how you could revisit it in such depth, but that would take some research.
Yeah, I mean, the 30 East Drive one, I don't. You've got no chance. But the two girls that are involved in the Enfield haunting, they're still around. It would be nice to get to talk to them, but I know that they probably wouldn't be interested in reliving that experience.
No, that's right.
But, as going back to the Mothman prophecies, that was well documented of poltergeist activity happening after an encounter of that. So it does tie in so many different areas. But then we find this quite a lot in the field, don't we, where we start looking at something and then it all starts to... It's very strange how things come up and link together, and we call it the rabbit hole, don't we? We go down that rabbit hole and then things start, like, you think, how is that connected? And that's a curveball to the research I was doing. It doesn't seem to fit. But
yeah, I think it's more a nest than a rabbit hole, but yeah.
And I find the ufology world very difficult to decipher, quite frankly. When I look at the cases, which I've done shows on ufology cases over the years, and I find them very, very difficult with so many accounts that are contravene each other and contradict, rather, not contravene, contradict each other. I mean, Rendlesham Forest is a famous one that oh my God, depending on what camp you believe or who you don't believe, and then there's people even to this day arguing about this fact or that fact, and it's not in this piece of document that they found, but it's in that piece of document. It's a quagmire of mud, basically.
Yeah.
And little things are taken out, and then they go, oh, but I've got CIA files that have been like decommissioned, and how can you make sense of some of those when they're blacked out so much? This is where I become very, oh my God, about it all.
Even this, and as you say, Kerry, on Rendlesham Forest, and we've actually been there, and even we had a sort of, I suppose, and what we had is was a strange experience, wasn't it, when we spoke to that chap who came out of
we had a near-death experiences and
creepers, didn't we?
Strange experiences, yeah.
Yeah. Let's tell people about that, because we'd gone to Rendlesham Forest just, for a day trip out, one of our road trips, and
it was traumatic.
It was dramatically long walking because we didn't know the areas, so we was just following the ufology trail that they've got laid out in the forest. It takes you for miles out of the way.
70 miles later.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, we went wrong. We were sort of taking wrong advice from one individual, and it turned out East Gate, the famous East Gate, we finally found it, and we found that my car was only parked about 200 yards away from it originally.
Yeah, but we had to walk for like 7 hours to
get to that point. Yeah. So coming back from down from Eastgate, we were, and great, lovely Eastgate, walking down to the car park area. I said we were being followed, didn't we? There was somebody following us.
Yeah.
Yes, that's right.
Right, and I said it a couple of times, and every time I turned around to see this person, I dashed into the fence side, not the wood, which you would expect if it was a dog walker or something like that. And then we got to the car, and that instant was over. And then we left Paul in the car because he was absolutely exhausted. Absolutely exhausted. And we were like, "You're all right?" He's like, "Oh my God, I'm dying." "That's fine. You stay there. Have a little rest. We'll be back in a minute." And we went to find the site of the thing, which was dead easy, and it was all fine. And then we came back. As we came back to the car park, there was a man who came out of he was in another car, came out and said, asked if we were a certain person. We were like, no. And we got talking to him, didn't we, guys?
Well, yeah. And it was quite funny because we sort of like emerged from the darkness and he was standing there, and he actually asked if we were a girl's name to you, wasn't it, Kerry, I believe?
I know. I was like, oh, my Lord.
And, and you just walked out this dark wood with two men.
My reputation took a hit that night, everybody.
But then we just started talking, didn't he? And it turned out that he spends a lot of time sort of in the woods. Yeah, probably too much time for some of the stuff he was saying, but it certainly sort of seemed to go along. It was sort of based around the incident, the UFO incident, but certainly from what he was saying, there's a lot more going around in Rendlesham Forest than just that.
The whole area, wasn't it? It wasn't just Rendlesham, it was the whole area. But coming back to the Mothman prophecies, this guy in Rendlesham Forest was talking about a creeper that had been seen, like a weird creature, cryptozoology kind of situation, strange fires that were taking place, activity that was happening, government involvement. Yes, it is a government site in those two areas. It is a government case that happened. So you had UK government involvement. People saying don't talk about this and being threatened. Very conspiracy theory, wasn't it? Because we asked him to come on a show to talk about it, and he disappeared. He was talking quite happily, but then he disappeared.
He was wasn't he talking via social media to Andy?
Yeah, I think they were emailing. So yeah.
Okay, yeah, emailing, but then all of a sudden that stopped.
He disappeared. His profile and his email address wasn't going through, and all of a sudden it just stopped. So you can see how a conspiracy theory would get born from that.
Oh yeah. It was certainly an interesting evening, and he was actually quite guarded to start off with, but once he sort of opened up and started to talk, it was an interesting sort of encounter, so to speak.
A very late night encounter in the woods of Rendlesham Forest is definitely one that we will never forget, I think.
We're going to go back and do it again.
We're going to go back and do it all again. Interesting enough, he gave his name as John too, just like a side note. We don't believe it was a real name, though, is all I'm saying on that one.
No.
So going back to the Mothman prophecies or any of these kind of scenarios, it's not hard, is it? And actually going back to the 1947 account that we looked at with Darlan and Crimson, they tried to sell their story to a magazine editor called Arnold. Now, he then summoned 2 officers, apparently of Army intelligence, to investigate this. Well, they came to investigate, but when leaving, their plane caught fire and crashed allegedly. I'm saying this allegedly because it just seems all so bizarre to me. This is bad coincidence, if nothing else.
It is, isn't it?
Because it caught fire and crashed, killing both the officers, which, of course, added more fuel to the conspiracy theories claims, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Well, yeah. It was brought down deliberately. Yeah. Well, you can see it. Yeah.
But, when you look at the Mothman prophecies, he's not building a conspiracy theory. He's laying out each interview or each situation as per his knowledge of what happened with the people that he spoke to. Because he was very much hands-on in going to visit and go and talk to the people that have had the accounts, John Keel, wasn't he?
Yeah, he certainly, that sort of like book and his thing, it's just a documentation of what of what was imparted to him and interview witnesses and stuff like that. He doesn't sort of come to any sort of hard conclusions and himself. He just leaves he just leaves the work as is for other people to take it and which way they want to, I suppose.
Yeah, very much so. What does interest me with that one is this ties very much into the Mothman, doesn't it? Actually, the Kryptoid Mothman, which you've spoken to people about before. When you look at the Mothman himself, people have like problems with their eyes, don't they? Which again is a very common thing in the ufology case. And some of the pictures that are out there about what this is supposed to look like, and again it ties into the film because we now have a mental image from propaganda and media of what this is supposed to look like. What do we make of that? Is it a mechanical suit that a human is wearing, or do we think it is an actually cryptid animal?
No, I think I mean personally, I don't believe in it, and I just think it's almost like one of these urban legend type descriptions. It might have eyes reflecting back of a night when someone's driving down the road and you get a reflection of the eyes. Someone could say they're red, orange, blue, green, whatever colour. But, I mean, looking at some of your research, it strikes me that, again, because you're talking about the Mothman prophecy, it was over a period of 13 months in Point Pleasant that it was witnessed by over 100 sightings in that time. And obviously it culminated in the collapse of the Silver Bridge in 1967. And they're sort of taking it as, if you see this Mothman, it's like a prophecy of doom.
Yeah, it's a harbinger
because it's been seen at other places. Apparently, going further down in your research, it says that it was witnessed in New York before the 9/11 and multiple sightings before the Minnesota Bridge collapse. I've actually got a picture in front of me now of what is alleged to be the Mothman in New York, I think it is. And it just looks like a seagull to me. It just looks like a picture of a seagull.
A big albatross.
But they've just zoomed in. It doesn't look.
The Mothman to me, I mean, sort of some people say it's a cryptid. It's certainly not a cryptid, or or a living thing. But then again, mechanical and stuff. It doesn't. It almost seems to me as sort of like a hallucinogenic type sort of thing, and even though people are seeing the same thing, it could be some sort of collective sort of hallucination or something like that. It certainly seems something that only the mind is capable of sort of dreaming up, as opposed to, sort of something physical and real.
Or it could just be an X-Man. We've all seen X-Men.
I don't know what to make of that. In all honesty, too many people have had encounters with it to make me think it's a hallucinogenic visualization from a deep psyche archetypal type kind of thing. I don't buy into some of the sightings that were seen. I think people like to link things. So, so with any big disaster, it's like, it's part of the conspiracy theory, isn't it? Oh, this was supposed to have seen that photograph. I'm the same as you. It looks to me like just a bird, a big bird, but a bird. But
oh yeah, I've got it now.
It's so far away. You can't make any features, so it could be anything, right?
Thunderbird.
It could be anything. It could be a storm.
Thunderbird.
You know what I mean? It could be something like that. You're going with the Thunderbird. Thunderbirds are goal.
There's Kryptoid called the Thunderbird.
Oh, is there?
Yep. And it's just a big giant eagle type thing.
Like a griffin?
Yeah, sort of similar thing. Yeah, that's what that is. I've decided.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Again, because of the Point Pleasant scenario and the link to the Mothman through that, and again we're going into the ufology and whatnot. We've come off Men in Black a little bit. We're going into cryptozoology and that sort of field, which again is like, that's a whole different ball game, isn't it?
Yeah,
certainly. Yeah.
Is it people saying that because it's now got this reputation as being, like a harbinger of doom? It's not got a very good reputation, the old Mothman, has it? In regards to, nobody's had a pleasant experience with it. But too many people have had that encounter. And again, it usually comes alongside the ufology world.
See, and this creature also does get about because again, it says in the research there that Germany, there was a Mothman-like creature that scared miners away shortly before a collapse. So again, it's taking that harbinger of doom, but he was trying to save people at the end of the day. And apparently there was a creature a bit similar to that, haunting the facilities for a while before the nuclear meltdown at Chernobyl.
Well, I've never heard that one before.
It's in your research.
No, it's in the research.
I mean, I've seen the documentary about Chernobyl, and I don't remember seeing it in that.
Again,
so I don't know whether that's true. That's alleged.
But again, this, when we start looking at these kind of cases, like the same as the Bigfoot, there's no credible, there's no credible physical evidence to back them up.
No, the only evidence there is the actual fact that these things happened.
So they're just witness statements. Oh, well, no. Yeah. In regards to the actual creature, I say creature again. Do you know what I mean?
No, that's not. The only truth we can pick from these sightings is that these, like the bridge collapses, the Silver Bridge and Minnesota Bridge collapse, that they're the only true bits we can actually pick out of those. Their statements, because we don't know what this creature is.
If it exists, people are people are very good at misinterpreting what they see or hear. How many times? And again, we're seeing it in today's news. People are putting information out there. A lot of it's false information. A lot of it is false information. A whole conspiracy builds up about that piece of false information that's been shared time and time again, and it bears a whole thing about something. So somebody's misunderstood that. It was like quite clear. One little incident. our Prime Minister comes on and says we're shutting the schools from Friday. The very next day, I was talking to somebody who went, we're going into complete lockdown tomorrow. And I was like, this was on the Thursday, and I was like, no, we're not. So the schools are locking down on Friday, but not the whole country. Oh, no, he said he didn't. You clearly didn't listen properly. And this is
right.
And that's just listening. People hear what they want to hear, they see what they want to see, and if they can't come up with a rational explanation for what they've seen, they won't make it up. We talk about false memory, we talk about witness statements are not reliable. You know, do we not feel that this is part of that?
Yeah.
Oh, it certainly could be. Yeah, I mean, sort of like the whole Mothman. The bizarreness of it all, and I think it is a case of sort of people putting 2 and 2 together and coming up with 5.
Or they are actually experiencing something that is so out of the norm, and they have a physical reaction to it, like their eyes having massive conjunctivitis problems, and the fear that comes with it. So they relate the emotional experience and the physical manifestation of issues that they have to something that's completely irrational in their brains. They translate it, or they interpret it as something that maybe not right, but for them became very real because of their physical and emotional responses to that. They've interpreted it as something completely different to actually what it was. Doesn't mean to say they didn't experience something strange, something beyond their beyond their ability to rationalise. It is something weird and strange and bizarre, but they've interpreted it as, say, a Mothman, for example, when in actual fact it may have been something completely different, like maybe, possibly, testing of a new suit from the government.
Yeah.
That's caused an adverse reaction. Or it could be something we don't even know about yet. And we've talked to Alison Johnlin before now, haven't we, about Mothman. She thinks they're migratory animals.
Yeah.
And they're not common. They're not like on every street corner. Do you know what I mean? But because of the sightings, she thinks they migrate because of various sightings that have been seen over the time. I don't know enough about all of that to comment.
Well,
but
I mean,
I do find it fascinating.
Yeah, I mean, it could be possible because, I mean, at the end of the day, it's got wings, so they're assuming it's a bird-like creature, and most birds migrate to different places.
I'm of the opinion it is, it's just so bizarre. I mean, if they were actual flesh and blood sort of creatures, and the size of them and everything, and they'd be seen a lot more often, surely.
Yeah.
It's a bit like sort of people talking about the Loch Ness Monster, and there's a group of them. And if that was true, and they are air breathing, they would be breaking the surface all the time, and loads of people would see them.
Yeah. But one encounter has bred a whole mythology over what that could be. And so going back to what we, where we started with this, which was John Keel's account, if we've got that one instant where someone's, misinterpreted something that they've witnessed, a lot of people have misinterpreted what they've witnessed because it's so out of their knowledge, I suppose you would call it, and so different to their rational thought. It could have been translated into something that it wasn't. So now it's grown a whole mythology of its own, and then we get multiple accounts all over the world of it, all linked in to the ufology world, because then we get these, lights in the sky and encounters and people having, abduction scenarios and missing time and poltergeist activity. When you start looking at the whole area and the whole bizarre sequence of events, you can take them as individual accounts. It does seem strange all these accounts were focused on this town.
Yeah, I mean, the Point Pleasant sort of area. I mean, well, we obviously don't know much about these sort of places. We don't live over there, but it does have a few elements of it has a an old disused military facility there, the TNT bunkers, so there's little elements that can sort of there to make a good story as well.
Exactly. I would say I'm not discounting anybody's experience here. I'm just trying to look at it from a different perspective. And say, having never experienced anything like that myself, I don't know. Do you know what I mean? I have spoken to people who have had encounters, and it does make for interesting things. Anyway, we're going to take a quick break now for just a few seconds. So please join us on the Paranormal UK Radio Network just after this.
Hello, Harry Price here. If there's nothing me and my friends enjoy more here on the other side, it is to sit back and relax and listen to the Paranormal Concept Show, right here on the PAUK Radio Network. Broadcasting a plethora of interesting and informative content for all your paranormal needs. Find them across social media to keep up to date with forthcoming shows and all their other adventures. Hello, is there anybody there?
And welcome back to the Paranormal Concept Show, exclusive to the Paranormal UK Radio Network. So we've kind of gone around so many different things in the first half, haven't we? We've kind of, we've talked about Men in Black encounters, we've talked about a couple of cases, we've talked about, conspiracy theories, and we've led down into poltergeist and Mothman encounters. It's all getting a bit murky again, isn't it?
It is. There's plenty of ways we could go through with the Men in Black. There's just so many doors it leads to, It's a massive subject. Crosses over with so much.
It does. Yeah. Richard?
Yeah, I think sort of like, and particularly the cases they're connected to. I mean, you sort of like, we had the Mothman case, and then, which is a totally bizarre case, but then they sort of turn up with the more mundane, sort of just basic UFO sighting cases as well. So when you're sort of like talking about this subject, it is sort of, not confusing, but it's very broad of what these Men in Black can actually sort of turn up after.
Exactly. I mean, we talked about a gentleman in the previous, the very early encounter that we spoke about was Albert Bender. Now, apparently, he was well-written, extremely intelligent man who founded the International Flying Saucer Bureau, right? And he compiled a paper to prove that the government had covered up proof of UFOs. And then he was visited, allegedly, by Men in Black. This is the other thing. They never appear as one. There's always a couple of them as well, isn't there?
Yeah. Well, they always work in twos, even in the movie.
Yeah, but even in, we're watching video footage on YouTube and photographs, there's always, two of them. And they stick out like sore thumbs, quite frankly, is all I'm going to say. But he says that 3 men dressed in black visited him at his home, warned him about continuing his research, and they left him scared for his life. And he shut down all of his research and the Bureau. He did everything. And he was a changed man afterwards.
Do you think he was intimidated so much that he closed the Flying Saucer Bureau? Or do you think the Men in Black overtook it?
I think if anybody came along and said to me, what you're researching is going to put your family at risk, and actually made me scared for my family, I would shut it down. I would stop. But
what happened if they didn't say that and they just said, we're taking all your stuff because you've researched the UFOs, we're taking it all. You're going to basically tell everybody that you've shut the Flying Saucer Bureau, but we're taking it over. You work for us now. So you've got to be secret about it all.
Well, apparently people who knew him said that he was a changed man after the encounter, and his work was incredibly different to how it had been before. And he lived in constant anxiety and terror. But could he have had a mental breakdown? And he's then, because of the research he was doing, could he then have translated that with his mental breakdown into something that wasn't? Again, we go back to
Yeah.
And I don't know. I don't know, everybody out there, so before everyone starts screaming at me, it's a possibility that his mental breakdown, he's actually related it to something that maybe didn't happen, or he got over paranoid because of the work he was researching. He got very, but apparently, again, the phone call thing comes in. Strange phone calls. Nobody on the other end. I've had this when I was a teenager. I had some kids doing prank phone calls, and that basic thing was enough to upset me, freak me out.
Oh yeah, of course. And I do like sort of like where you've gone down, a psychological type sort of cause to it. Yeah, I mean we know, and academic types can be quite intense with their thought patterns and stuff, and it's not that uncommon for them to have breakdowns. And they sort of, if you're sort of, there's a very thin line between being sort of, highly academic and intelligent and sort of going over the edge. So, yeah, I do like that idea.
Having said that, I don't know Albert Bender at all, and I've not looked at his work, so I can't pass comment. But from a little bit that I know about from researching that, it does seem strange that he was allegedly visited by 3 men, and after that he was changed. He became a changed person. From my perspective, it would seem to be he hit a point, had a nervous breakdown, and from that point onwards he was a changed man from his psychological perspective. I don't know what circumstances led up to that point, apart from his research and write in the paper. He may well have found out some information that changed his perspective on life.
Or tipped him over the edge.
Yeah.
Psychosis is a very strange phenomenon in itself. And actually, if we're talking about psychology, we'd need to get a psychologist on to really, get to the grips of this one. But with looking at the research he was doing, it's not so great a jump that he then, sees all of these strange things. I mean, in the early days of the telephone lines, I would imagine, it was quite common to have missed phone calls or strange phone calls or non-connecting phone calls that seemed like there was tapping going on the line or whatever. So if you're starting to get paranoid because of the research that you're doing, it's not too big a jump to assume that anything from that point on that was a little bit weird, like maybe a phone call, would make you more paranoid.
Well, yeah, of course. I mean, thinking back, we are going back to the 50s and even before the digital, and even I remember when you used to phone up the old exchanges and when you were dialing and stuff like that, and they used to clunk and everything when you were sort of like putting calls through, and even during the call you can still hear a lot of sort of background noise from the exchange, which if you were sort of paranoid and stuff, you could interpret all sorts of ways.
Possibly. Or, again, we're talking about this in very different ways, aren't we? Because there's the other school of thought that he did find out something. They did put the actual fear of God into him. So for the, he was worried for his family's life. So he then did become this anxious, paranoid mess that was constantly in terror for his life. And they were tapping his phone, giving him mysterious phone calls as if to say, we're still watching you. But again, it leads so much into conspiracy theory that whenever I hit a conspiracy theory or what smacks of a conspiracy theory, maybe I'm very sheltered. Maybe I'm very blinkered to my view of the world. I don't want to believe the worst case scenarios that conspiracy theories tend to reveal.
Yeah, I can understand that. Yeah, say for me, sort of like conspiracies, this sort of, I can see why people get sort of dragged into them. I mean, it is a sort of like it's a whole cottage industry now, and but I'm not a huge buyer into the conspiracy theory because I tend to the most mundane sort of situation or sort of answer is probably the correct one.
Yeah, I mean, I like the straightforward, logical things that they can come out with. The ones that make sense. I mean, I don't believe in these far-fetched ones like, oh, it was aliens did it and things like that. I'm not really into those sort of conspiracies. But the more logical stuff that people come out with, especially when it comes to government secrets, especially if they say, like, oh, it's a government conspiracy, government are like covering it up. Well, yeah, you know, they're going to. There are some things that the government will try to cover up.
Oh, yeah.
Because, as we said, every government should have secrets just for the society's sake.
And there are conspiracies. That happen, you know, sort of. And, you know, but it's just some people take them to the extreme.
They do seem to. They do seem to. Or, like I say, are we so blinkered by blind trust in our governments that we do believe everything? I mean, okay, let's look at today's scenario. Everybody's saying it's just a flu. The reason that they're shutting down everything has got nothing to do with this flu virus. It's actually to do with control and locking everybody in the house. They can enforce martial law, so they can change things, and we're all locked down, so we can't do anything about it. That's a big conspiracy that's going on at the moment. From my perspective, I'm looking at it and I'm going, they don't want that many people infected that badly because our health service can't cope with it, which is why they're putting the measures in place, because it is that virulent. And it will kill a lot of people if we don't get a handle on it. So they're putting the measures in place. In the UK, this is everybody, in a slow, steady way, looking at it from a scientific way, which keeps the pressure off of the resources we have.
Yeah. I mean, this...
Yeah,
that makes sense to me. That actually makes sense to me. But if listen to the conspiracy theory... You could go down a completely different paranoid route, couldn't you?
Well, I mean, if we are going to take it as face value, and there is obviously this big virus that's coming around, and they want to obviously stop it, at the end of the day, these people that are going out and acting against government advice, we're just culling stupid people. That's what we're doing.
Unfortunately, the world doesn't seem to work that way. They'll probably contract it, pass it on to the vulnerable people that they're trying to protect. That's the sad part about it, isn't it?
It is. Yeah, it won't be just them that suffers, unfortunately. But
no.
Yeah.
And this is the problem. But if it is to gain martial control of the masses, I think they've done a pretty good job anyway. Because let's be fair, all of the social structures that are in place have just been shown up to be so flimsy.
Oh, yeah.
All the things we take for granted have been shown to be so flimsy in reality that it is a little microbe that actually has managed to shut that down. And it is, do we not, and then we can go into the conspiracy of, don't we think it's time the world changed?
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I can actually, I think after this situation, I mean, the world won't be the same. I think the way we live our lives won't be the same.
There's a lot of paranoid people out there, a very lot of scared and frightened people as well. And I think there was I heard somebody speaking earlier, there were three schools of thought. There's the people that are adhering to the government advice and following it to the letter. There's the people who are in complete denial and just living their lives normally because so far it hasn't impacted on their life, so it doesn't feel real.
Yeah.
And then you've got the people that are just gone into a spending frenzy because that's the only way they can control. That's the only thing they can control at the moment is what they're buying. So they've gone into a spending frenzy, which is why we're getting the panic buying, particularly in the UK.
Exactly. The human race does like to be in control.
Exactly. People do like to be in control. Yeah. Which is why we've got this panic buying. Once they realise, I actually do think the buying on that front is starting to hit saturation point because there's only so much you can buy and hold before you can't anymore. Do you know what I mean? So it will hit a point of equilibrium on that one. So, but that's why I think we're getting that. So you've got, add into the mix a load of conspiracy theories of the figures don't add up, and surely it's just a normal flu virus. We get that every year. The flu pandemic, there's people die of flu a lot more than this one. I think if they don't get the controls in place, this one has got the capacity to wipe out a higher percentage of people than people realise.
Yeah, it's multiplying. It's just the way it's multiplying. And at the moment, and there's an argument goes, well, it doesn't kill as much as seasonal flu, but no, it doesn't quite work like that. There's a lot of there's a big mathematical model behind this, and they know that this, if left unchecked, will be quite devastating.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
I mean, this corona is a mutated alien.
Love the word alien in there.
Yeah,
you got to get that in.
Yeah, absolutely. That's what it is. That's what it is, because it hasn't. I mean, it's existed since the 60s anyway, but it's sort of mutated now, so that it is starting to spread everywhere. My question is, what's the Men in Black going to do about it?
Well, they'll probably just dust down their black suits and come out again and sort of say a few odd things to people and then disappear.
Yeah, they want to defend us against the universe, get the old neuralizers out.
I think that is the problem with today. The impact of this particular situation is the fact that it's mutated. If it mutates again, then it becomes this is why they've got to lock this one down, because it has the capability of mutating.
Yes, they've got to kill it in its tracks, so to speak, because they can't really afford for this to mutate and become a seasonal sort of like the flu, become a seasonal sort of
or a different strand of the same thing, which is even more deadly than the one that's around now. But again, the conspiracy theory.
I was going to say, everyone's talking about a coronavirus, so let's get back to the Men in Black.
Yes, sorry, but it was the conspiracy theory thing that I was trying to make a point of, to be fair. I was trying to make a point on the conspiracy theory because it's so relevant now. And it is on everybody's heads at the moment, isn't it? Now, one of the most famous photographs, which if you check out our Paranormal Concept Facebook page, Richard shared the photo onto that page. Now, this is a Solway Firth spaceman photo. It's a well-known, well-documented photograph, and it's been said it's a spaceman that wouldn't have been around in that time or in that place, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, it's not actually... We're not going to go into the ins and outs of the photograph. Someone, Andy Mercer, actually, from PA UK, put up an explanation, which is his wife walking away. And actually, now he said that, when I look at it with different eyes.
Yes. Yeah. I can actually sort of, Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I can see that, but then it also looks like one of those little Evel Knievel dolls that you used to put.
Or one of those inflatable sort of bendy men you get at car and dealerships and stuff like that float around. Yeah.
There's probably Joe 90 in his spacesuit or something.
Who knows what it is, but it's a well-known photograph out there. Now, Jim Templeton took this photograph of his daughter, and he says that nobody was in view of the camera. And so this is why it's become such a thing, because it's like, supposed to be one of those most unexplained photographs. But from his perspective, he says there was nobody in the photograph when he took it apart from his daughter. And Kodak says that the photograph is authentic. Now, what's interesting about this, right, is it went public. He was then visited, allegedly, by two government agents who just referred to themselves as #9 and #10. I'm sure it wasn't a hashtag. I'm sure they just meant 9 and 10. And they wanted to see the site of the photograph and questioned him very much about the event on the time. Why would they do that if it was just his wife walking away, is my first question. Secondly, is this a conspiracy theory that's built up around this photo and that bit of the story didn't actually happen?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, this sort of, if you're sort of talking about the government agents that are turning up, sort of, they don't seem to be asking anything out of the ordinary. They just are asking him, could they please take, and could they please show them and where he took the photograph. I mean, that is quite benign. Perhaps, a couple of people and in the government were generally interested in it. I mean, it doesn't sound that out of the way, to be quite honest.
But sorry, Paul.
Could they also be investigating what actually happened? I mean, when was this picture taken? Do we know a year?
It's about 1975, I believe.
Okay, so you had a lot of, at the time, like the space race and all that sort of stuff going on, didn't you?
Mm-hmm.
So could it just be that they were investigating possible time travel?
Well, they certainly seem to have been interested in something, but according to the account, they just wanted to be taken to where the photograph was actually taken.
And got annoyed and stormed off.
Well, yeah.
I mean,
Impatient.
that's not very professional behaviour, is it?
Oh, that's quite rude.
It's like throwing a strop because they didn't get the information they wanted. But apparently, Templeton was contacted by 2 employees at a missile launch pad. Again, I find that fact, or that point, incredibly strange, because surely, if they're working at a missile launch pad, in Australia they worked, they would be under an Official Secrets Act.
Yeah, I mean, but the UK, was Woomera in South Australia, and there was particular missile tests actually taking place at the time this photograph was actually taken, but quite how they connected the two from different sides of the world is a bit odd. It's a bit of a mystery, but
why they would contact somebody in the UK about a photograph, because they seemed to say that there were 2 figures that resembled the man in the photograph was allegedly on the launch pad security footage. Why they would jump to that assumption that, we need to talk to this man, when you're under that kind of, if you're doing missile testing, it's going to be, anybody who works for that kind of government is under the Official Secrets Act, no matter what country you're in, right?
Well, apparently the missiles at that site in Australia had been produced only 20 miles away from where the field was where that little girl had the picture taken.
So the missiles were produced 20 miles away from where he took the photo, and then in Australia, the missiles were then transported to Australia, where they were then having the missile testing. 2 employees from the missile launch then joined the dots that he took that photograph 20 miles away from where the missile... It doesn't add up to me logically, that.
No.
It is a bit strange, but who knows?
But then what was in these missiles, because it looks like a hazmat suit.
It does look like a sort of like a chemical and biological suit. It does look odd.
Or it could have been his wife walking away and you're seeing a back view of her, and she's got a white hat on, which back in them days, women wore hats. They had their best hat and their best bonnet to go with their outfit. And it's just, he just didn't remember because false memory and stuff does play.
To be fair, exactly what you said, it does look like the back of someone just by the way that arm is folded.
Yeah, the way the arm is crooked at the side,
to be fair, until somebody said that to me, I've always thought it was a strange photo. But the minute someone said that, I suddenly thought, actually, that could be right. Yeah. Particularly if they're wearing... Back in the day, in 1975, hats were very small and had a veil type thing going on. So it is possible it is that. Now someone said that to me, I'm thinking, actually, that makes sense to me.
Yeah, because she could possibly been there sort of posing her daughter, because that is a very posed shot of the girl holding a bunch of flowers. And, she goes, you can imagine her saying, right, sort of kneel there, hold the flowers, look at daddy, smile at the camera, and she turns away and walks off.
Yeah. But it does say in a series of photographs that it only appears in one. But again, how true that is, we don't know. Do you know what I mean? But the whole thing, particularly about him being contacted by the employees at the missile launch pad from Australia, doesn't add up to me in my head. It doesn't seem logical, particularly under the, non-disclosure agreements, would not allow you to do that. So for that one, it just... And then and then they seemed to throw a strop when he didn't give them the information. These men in black stormed off. I mean, come on, it just doesn't seem right. The whole account doesn't seem right to me on that one.
Yeah,
it's an interesting case.
It is, and again, is it a case of the conspiracy theorists have taken that? Because another thing that was said to me was about that particular photograph was, they appeared on the site, and it was basically a time traveller or a multi-dimensional traveller, should we say, that's suddenly gone, oh, wrong place, and then flicked out again to where he should be.
Yeah.
I mean, if we're talking like weird, I suppose that's as good a theory as any, but it seems more batshit crazy than anything.
Yeah, absolutely.
And honestly, but what do I know? As I say, I've never had an encounter. But I will reiterate, I have spoken to people that have had abduction experiences in private. I won't discuss the details of the case that I was looking at. And it was followed up by a man in a black suit saying, don't talk about this.
Yeah.
She hasn't gone public. The person hasn't gone public with the account because she doesn't want to...
Is that someone in this country? Or?
Yeah, that's somebody in this country. She doesn't want to disclose, which is her choice completely.
Oh, no, absolutely. Yeah, no, you've got to do that.
But I know her personally. She's very credible. When she's talking, she's not hysteria. She's hysterical. She's not emotional even. She lays out, this happened on this day. That's how I feel about it. I don't like talking about it. I got approached by men afterwards. They told me not to talk about it. And, I haven't, apart from privately. So it does... What she did sort of state, it didn't scare her. Not to the level that Albert Bender was allegedly scared. But then, that's a personal account she had. What information did he find out in that research that he was doing?
And you don't know what he was like either, because sometimes, I mean, if you use the same, if you're going to intimidate someone and use the same level of intimidation, it will affect somebody worse than others. So again, it depends on the person as well.
Exactly.
So she just might not care. And think, yeah, whatever.
Or it could be to do with age. When she had her encounter, she was quite young. Whereas Albert would have been a lot older. So she may not have realised the importance or the threatening side of it, and they may not have approached it in the threatening side of it because of her age. Whereas for him, they laid it on thick because of his age and the information he had. For her, it's just a personal account. Shut up, don't talk about it. Okay, no worries. Whereas him, it's like, we are going to do some serious damage if you don't stop this now.
Yeah, and if anything, if Albert, he probably knew what he was onto, or sort of, what he was sort of like delving into was of a sensitive nature.
So, Paul, what's the next one you'd like to look at?
The case with Paul Miller.
Right. Okay, tell me about that one.
Okay, so he was returning home after a hunting trip when he saw a luminous disc in the sky. The disc landed in an empty field, and two humanoid people or creatures emerged from the craft. And as you do, you fire your gun at them.
Oh, of course you do.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, two people out of an alien spaceship. You shoot them. What do you want to be? But yeah, he apparently he shot one and injured one of them, and then he ran away down this rural road in his car. But then at that moment, he realised that he lost time as I said earlier about the UFO cases, he missed 3 hours, basically, since he encountered that craft, and he sort of shrugged it off and went back to his Air Force job the next day. But when he got to work, he was immediately confronted by 3 men in black suits, and they told him they had his file, despite having told no one about this previous occurrence, and they knew all about him.
Oh, right.
So, yeah. So is this sort of a government agency? Because if the guy is working for the Air Force, they've got... I mean, if they are a government agency, they could just basically go, well, I want files on this geezer here. And they've got to provide it. There is something that... So is this actually a government agency, sort of similar along the lines of CIA, FBI sort of thing, but part of the Secret Service? And because of the stuff that they are dealing with, obviously they don't want to get out into the public, so it has been classified need to know.
Okay. On this one, I'm seeing a man that's out in the middle of a hunting... He's on a hunting trip, sees something strange.
Yep, then you shoot at him.
Why would you shoot at somebody? Because you're scared. Because it's out of your comfort zone. It's out of your form of reference.
It must have...
Because I live in a society...
If he's military trained, surely he is... You don't shoot on sight. You don't shoot for no reason, do you? You are controlled by what you shoot at, surely.
He must have felt threatened when he actually encountered this. You know,
see, I don't understand
the shoot. Yeah,
I don't understand that mentality because I've grown up in a gunner society.
Yeah, true.
So I don't understand how Americans and whatever other countries walk around with guns. And so I don't understand their mentality.
But they don't fire willy-nilly for no reason. And he is Air Force.
If he's Air Force, he's going to have that extra training, as you said. So
it's for him to fire at them, he must have had a psychological reaction to make him want to fire that gun at whatever it was he saw. If it was a government experiment, let's go with government experiment on a flying craft, the suits the guys were wearing were, fitting with the technology that they were flying, so it's out of his reference frame. He obviously felt threatened enough to fire the gun, right? So he's injured one. He believed he injured one, right? Went back to work the next day and has an encounter. If you're a government agency doing tests, first of all, don't talk about it. They're going to be quite annoyed that he's fired his gun and injured one of them on a government secret mission test.
Yeah, but these MIB agents just turned around and said, well, we know about the encounter and just forget about it. Didn't happen.
Yeah, that makes sense to me, but it doesn't mean it's UFO. It doesn't mean it's alien.
No, it doesn't. But at the same time, if it was a government, basically, if it was a government testing a drone or whatever else they could have been testing, and 2 RAF blokes, or 2 Air Force blokes got out of it, and then he shot one of them, they wouldn't be saying, "Oh no, it's all right, don't forget about it. Just forget about it." They'd have him up on a court-martial. No,
not if they're trying to keep it secret. They wouldn't.
If it's that sort of sensitive, and they don't want.
If one Air Force man shoots another, I'm sure they'd pretty much say.
But you're talking about if it was Air Force to Air Force. Totally agree with you. If it's government secret experiment and Air Force, maybe that's the only reason he got away with it.
Yeah, I would go with that.
Possibly, because he says they seem to know everything about me, where I worked, my name and everything else. Now, like you say, all of his details will be on file within the Air Force. They're confidential files. So they must have access to those files. That does not scream alien to me.
No, and it's obvious the people that visited him actually knew of the incident. And they must have gained that information from somewhere. And if his account is to be believed, it was just him there. And you can imagine perhaps the two people he shot at actually must have reported it. He was saying we were conducting the experiment and we were actually, and someone came across us and shot at us.
Mm.
You best put a lid on this.
Yeah, put a lid on it. So they, that would be quite scary because all of a sudden you're being visited by people that's not in your unit or your base, but has access to you on your base because it happened while he was at work, yeah?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Because it says upon entering work. So he's obviously in this account.
No, he was on a hunting trip.
When the event happened, when the three men visited him, it was upon entering work. He was immediately confronted by three men in black suits, so they have access to the base.
Yeah, it's like
you try getting onto a military base.
It's like it happening to me today, and then me going to work tomorrow, and that's when the three men in black collared him.
Exactly.
That's right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So if you worked for a military base, you try getting onto a military base unless you've got power.
Yeah, so this sort of incident does sort of sound, it may be a military sort of
exercise.
Incident.
Yeah,
a military sort of
that
test
he's
of some
come
sort.
across. Yeah, that he's come across. What is interesting to me is somebody military firing his gun at something because, as I say, the restraints on willy-nilly firing of your gun would be ingrained. You fire on order, don't you?
Yeah, but surely though, if you're coming home from a hunting trip and you see two blokes, you wouldn't shoot at them because you know they're blokes.
Well, no, he says they're humanoid. So if they had like a neoprene suit on or something, I don't know, because that's the theory of the Greys, isn't it? It is actually a suit. It's not.
Yeah.
It's not their true appearance because it's a suit that's biologically designed so they can survive in this environment. If that was the suit, I'm not saying they were Greys because I don't know what type of suit it was or the appearance of these humanoid. It just says they were humanoid.
Exactly. You don't even know they were wearing suits.
Exactly, you don't know. But then no one's sort of come up against a Grey to sit down and with a cup of tea and say, take your suit off, mate. It's just not done.
Yeah.
Not done at all.
Yes, sir. A bit like you don't wear your coat indoors. You get cold when you go back out.
But again, that's a theory that's come up, isn't it? Is that particularly with the Greys, I've heard that mentioned. But again, I go back to, if you look at how many different if you look at encounters with alleged aliens, there are so many different types. There's like about 14 or 15, if not more, different types of aliens. If that was the case, they're all visiting us from, other planets, all different types of planets, all these different types of aliens. The skies would be pretty full, wouldn't they, right?
Well, yeah. I mean, you wouldn't be able to go anywhere without coming across at least one of them, yeah.
Well, maybe this is one of the conspiracy theories we should start, because at the moment there's people saying there's no flights in the sky, but I'm managing to track lots of international flights. Maybe it's not flights they're tracking. Maybe it's UFOs, everybody.
Yeah, possibly. Not cargo planes, of
Nothing
course.
To do with
UFOs.
cargo planes. Or
No,
military. Oh, excuse me. But it gets weirder. Now, Danny Gordon was a radio personality who was interested in the Wythe County UFO sightings. Now, loads of people, again, a bit like Point Pleasant, loads of people were reporting bizarre objects in the sky. So Gordon decided to actually go and have a look and look into this. It does make me wonder if he was a bit like of a John Keel wannabe. Because he became obsessed with photographing these objects. Right? Now, I'm not saying that these things didn't take place. I'm not saying that people weren't seeing what they thought they were seeing. But he did manage to get a few photos at very close range and was saying that they were not of this world. They're not of this world. They're not within his frame of reference, basically. So they've got to be. The jump of assumption would then be, I don't know what these are. They've got to be from outer space, right?
Yeah.
But this is where it gets interesting. Gordon allegedly then received a phone call from a man who claimed to be ex-military.
Right.
Not actually in the military. He said, I'm ex-military. And said that his research could cost him everything and to stop doing it for his family's sake. So there's a threat there.
Yeah.
If this is true. He was also interviewed by two men in black suits who claimed to work for a magazine publication. Well, anybody who works for a magazine publication in black suits strikes weird to me, because all the people I know in the magazine world don't wear really black suits. They're a bit more wild than that, the creative sort, right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
But that's by the by. That's just my experience of them. But then all of a sudden he realised all the photographs that he'd taken were missing.
Right.
Now, he contacted the magazine that these two people were allegedly from, and they'd never heard of him, and certainly hadn't commissioned an article about him.
Oh.
But not long after that, Gordon actually had a heart attack, and he said that the stress of all this work he'd been doing and the travelling and the research that he was doing was jeopardising his health. But Gordon never gave up on the story. He didn't stop, but he was never bothered again. But that doesn't follow suit with other encounters that we've read about.
No, it doesn't.
They normally keep bothering you and scaring you and making you more paranoid. This doesn't seem to happen with Gordon.
No, he seems, as you say, he seems to continue. But from some of the other accounts we've gone through, I mean, just the visit alone is enough to actually sort of stop the people dead in their tracks from actually continuing whatever it is, or telling or talking about what's happened.
And because he hasn't got any of his evidence left, it's just ramblings of an old man sort of thing.
Exactly where I was going to go with that. Is it just where they've got the information they wanted, which was the alleged photographic proof, and then they've decided he's not really a threat and he's just ramblings of a man?
Yeah.
Let him sound crazy.
They take away the smoking gun and just let him carry on.
Yeah.
Because
that's what it sounds like.
It sounds like that to me. They don't see him as much of a threat. They've got what they wanted, job done. He can carry on researching as much as he likes, but his credibility is ruined a bit because he's been saying, I've got these photos. Has he made up this crazy story because he realises he hasn't got these photos? So now he just seems like a crazy whistleblower with no proof.
Yeah.
Possibly. Who knows? I don't know. We're just throwing ideas out there on what this, throwing a different perspective out there. Was he even in, maybe he took photographs, made massive claims, got them processed. They weren't what he thought they were, had to make up a crazy story to cover his tracks that he didn't actually have what he had, to try and hold on to his credibility. We don't know.
Yeah, perhaps someone just called his bluff. So he was, and he was talking about this, and they said, "Oh, okay," and show us the photographs. Oh, but I can't because some strange men come up and took them. There does have an air of that. He could have been a Walter Mitty type sort of character. We don't know.
We don't know. I'm not. All these people's credibilities, we're not calling into question. We're just trying to give a different perspective on it. And there are so many different facets of human nature, and political landscapes and relevancy of the encounters that they've had, that it's so individual, isn't it? So you can look at this one and go, possibly not. The military one smacks of government to me, not ufology to me.
Yep.
Yeah.
The Solway Firth photo could just be a very logical explanation, but the extra bit added onto it about being contacted seems completely... It just seems like it's been added on just to make it seem more bizarre than it actually is.
Yeah, because, whoever added that on, it's quite a sort of like a stretch. Why try and connect it with something that happened the other side of the world? That is quite a stretch, from something that's quite localised from, up the north of England to the deserts of Australia is,
And the
He's
men
odd.
and the men in black throw a strop and storm off.
Yeah.
Really, do you know what I mean? It stretches my credibility. It stretches my personal credibility when I look at these, because also, you know, we've done a basic research on this. I've not looked into any of these in huge depth. I'm not going to lie, because it doesn't seem worth looking into them in depth, because just the basic outline doesn't seem particularly credible to me.
Well, that's all these stories are, isn't it? They are sort of just basic stories, you know. I mean, how else can you embellish them? An individual has a visit from a couple of individuals. They basically have an exchange. You know, they're basically told or warned off doing something, and that's it. You know, they never seem to be ongoing. They're only usually sort of one-offs, and yeah.
But then that's what they want. If they do exist, that's exactly what they want. They want to be a figment of people's imagination.
Yeah, and it could explain their sort of strange behaviour, because they realise that when people try and impart what they've been through, they're going to say, this person's talking he's talking a load of old rubbish.
Yeah.
It could be part of to decredit the witness more.
I don't know what to make of it, because the more I was reading on these little accounts that I was coming up, famous accounts, famous photos that people have taken of, you know, alleged men in black, or, you know, YouTube videos that we watch with alleged men in black. The more I was watching that, more I was thinking, people are paranoid.
Yeah, absolutely.
People are just being paranoid here. Why are they jumping to that assumption? They might have had a strange experience that they may have misinterpreted, and then all of a sudden they're now seeing men in black, and they're seeing government conspiracies, and they're seeing, you know, weird phone calls. Having never experienced it, maybe I'm being, like I said earlier on in the show, maybe I'm completely blinkered and naive to this whole world. But I always feel
But
this
why
when
do
I
you
look
think,
at ufology.
if they are making it up, why do you think they're doing that? Is that because of 15 minutes of fame, or?
Quite possibly. Or they've genuinely had an encounter they can't explain, but because of media and propaganda and stories they've read, their brain has jumped to an assumption of something it wasn't.
Yeah. So again, in one of your research pages that you done, there's a story there that says Dan Aykroyd has come forward with his own story because he was taping a show about the paranormal, and he stepped out to take a phone call about Saturday Night Live, and he noticed a black Ford parked across the street, and a tall man stepped out of the Ford and stared him down. As Aykroyd turned away for a moment and then turned back, the man in the car had completely vanished. And then he said when he ended the phone call, he returned back to the studio to find out that his show had been cancelled and was ordered to stop filming immediately. And obviously people doubt his claim, but Dan Aykroyd just turns around and said, well, I know what I saw. And he maintains, and he always has, that there was some kind of MIB connection at the end of his show.
See, again, with this one, logic head on, right?
Yeah.
Dan Aykroyd is well known for Ghostbusters.
Yep.
Comedy actor.
Yep.
Right? So, okay, he's got this interest in the paranormal and UFO world. His public perception is not serious documentary kind of maker.
No.
Right? So he steps out, takes a phone call, which is something completely unrelated to what he does.
Yep.
On the road, there's a car with a man in a black suit. Doesn't approach him, doesn't say anything to him, and then drives away. His interest in the paranormal and the ufology world, now that is a theme we've seen through the ufology field, is a high level of paranoia and conspiracy theory belief.
Yep.
Right? And I'm not being rude when I say that. It's a fact. Dan Aykroyd maybe jumps to an assumption when that was a completely benign encounter with a person that just happened to be on a coincidence. It could have been just a pure coincidence. He walks back in, finds out his show has been cancelled and was ordered to stop filming. They cancel filming projects all the time.
Yeah.
It could just have been a coincidence.
And the bloke staring at Aykroyd, I mean, he might have even recognised him. You know, sort of someone got out of the car and went, "Oh, that's Dan Aykroyd
Is that Dan
over
Aykroyd?
there." Yeah, you have a good stare, don't you?
Exactly. Not enough to make you want to go up and go, "Oh man, you're Dan Aykroyd. Hello, how are you?" and all this.
Yeah.
And then
but I mean, my argument, why I brought that one up is because obviously you said like some people might make it up for 15 minutes of fame. Dan Aykroyd don't need that.
Dan Aykroyd doesn't need that, but it doesn't make what he had as a Man in Black encounter, because they didn't approach him, they didn't warn him to stop filming. It could be pure coincidence. Now again, I've heard various stories on this one. I've heard various versions of this story.
Okay.
On this particular one. Now I've heard that it wasn't Britney Spears, it was another famous person he was talking to appear on his show for the late night show or whatever, Saturday Night Live or whatever show it was that he was doing. I've heard that while he was out, they all got a phone call and were told to stop filming.
Yeah.
And it was by an unknown source. But then, again, we're talking about creative types who would question that.
Yeah.
Dan Aykroyd's got a lot his own money, I would assume. He wouldn't necessarily need backing from a studio if he really wanted to put this information out there.
But if it was the studio that was making the show, because of who he is, they would have got him to do the narrating and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, and like I say, but shows get cancelled all the time.
Yeah, but then there's a lot of paranormal shows about at the moment that should be cancelled that aren't.
That's a different topic completely, Bob.
Yeah,
that's another show there, boy.
Absolutely. I can see maybe coincidence, but on the other end, you know, coincidence, maybe not.
Who knows? He knows what he says. He knows what he saw. He knows what he experienced. He found that. He finds that very strange. However, I would also argue that if you're filming that kind of show, then you're looking at strange and paranormal things. So your mindset is set to looking at strange and weird and wonderful things that are happening around you, and you know you are more open to coinky dinks and sinky sinks, as we call them in the back studio. You know, and how often does it happen where we research a topic, then all of a sudden something happens and we go, "That's weird," because I was only looking at that the other day, or somebody pops up on your, or it starts streaming. Things start streaming that you've been researching. You think, "How the hell did that happen?" You know, because certain things trend and come up, and it all ties into Google algorithms. That because you've been researching something, it comes up on your. It's more common than you think. So if you set your mind to that, then all of a sudden you start seeing things that may be, and joining dots where there aren't, which leads into conspiracy theory again. Your brain kind of makes a conspiracy theory out of coincidences and synchronicities. Maybe. I don't know. We've talked very much of maybes and who don't, you know, and things like that, haven't we? But this is a topic that, Paul, you find very, very interesting from you mentioned it at the top of the show, the time dimensional thing, where people are stepping out from a dimension and you know, doing that sort of thing. It gets into a whole realm of physics and whether or not you can physically do it. And then we get into things like the Philadelphia experiment. And, oh, my God. And then my brain just starts to explode.
You get a bit frazzled, yeah. It is an area that is so sort of diverse, but in a strange way, all interlinked, and it does overload my sort of brain capacity at times.
Give me the spiritual woo-woo any day of the week is what I say.
That's why I love these subjects, because it takes you down so many routes, and you can discuss the timelines and stuff like that, and it is just amazing. You can really get into deep conversations with it.
well, you can, and then we start arguing because
That's right.
we look at it from so completely different perspectives. I'll always look at it from look at the mindset at the time, look at it logically. Don't look at it from a paranoid perspective. Look at it from a very cold, rational perspective, if you can, because I'm sure if you've experienced it, you're not not necessarily rational. Because, like I keep saying, it's out of your frame of reference. Whenever you come across something that's out of your frame of reference, it's strange, it's weird, and your brain tries to understand that. How it interprets that very much would depend on what you're surrounding yourself with at that time, which is why in the middle of the night a knock you hear is all of a sudden a ghost, when in actual fact it's the house settling. You don't necessarily
totally.
you put it down to a paranormal occurrence rather than it being a normal everyday occurrence or something that just happens through natural laws of physics of contraction and expansion due to hot and cold temperature changes. Natural.
Yeah.
Rational.
Yeah, but and I always use those sort of explanations last. It's always the logical first.
Isn't there a famous saying?
Yeah.
No matter how improbable when you've discounted everything, I don't know, I can't remember it now.
The Sherlock Holmes.
It's the Sherlock Holmes
quote, isn't it? I'm going to have to look that up quickly. Carry on, lads, while I have a quick little.
But I do agree that sometimes it is the mindset of people, and they do jump to conclusions. But as an investigator and a skeptic anyway, I always look for the logical, and it's just a case of always put them to test first. You get the knocking on the radiator, for example. Is it going to be more logical to be the water cooling down and the pipes, or is it going to be a ghost sitting there tapping the radiator because he can't do nothing else?
I've quickly looked up that saying, and it says, "How often have I said to you that when you have eliminated the impossible, whatever remains, however improbable, must be the truth."
Truth. Yep.
That's the saying I was searching for there. But yeah, totally. I totally agree with you. You have to look at it, and it is fascinating. I do find it fascinating how people's minds work, particularly in this way. They want to believe there's something out there. They want to believe in aliens. Aliens visiting us from outer space, I suppose. So they look for information that backs up that mindset and that belief system. So I'm not saying they're not out there, but who knows, right?
Everything that comes with the Men in Black. So you've got the UFO sighting, the poltergeist activity, and then on top of that, you get visited by Men in Black. It's a bit much. If it's just a case of you want to believe there's aliens, you've just experienced a UFO. That'd do. So you don't need the poltergeist activity and the Men in Black.
No, but if you're getting all those things happening at once, it does add up to a very strange thing, and your brain is going to sort of jump to a lot of different conclusions very quickly, and maybe not. 2 and 2 is 4. Maybe 2 and 2 becomes 5. Who knows?
Well,
on the last note, though, have either of you experienced a UFO?
I did experience something years ago, and this was going back to the 1970s. Sort of like a craft in the sky. It was a point of white light, but out of either end was a real dark grey sort of object. So it was sort of long and thin, like a cigar shaped. I know these are sort of recognised and UFOs, but there was a point of intense light, but it didn't have any bleed over, and just coming out of either side was a real dark grey sort of solid, what appeared to be solid object. And this was when I was doing football training many years ago.
Paul?
I had an experience, but was it UFO? I don't know, to be fair. It was if you like imagine the traditional flying saucer with the bit in the middle and then the bulge, either like the top and bottom. But you couldn't really make out too well the bulges. But along the middle, it was like multicoloured. So it had red, blue, green, and in like red, blue, and green, red, blue, and green, red, blue, and green, all around the side. I've seen something like that, but it could have been something else. I don't know.
And on that note, we've actually come to the end of the show. Whatever way you think of it, the ufology world is a fascinating case study in itself. From Men in Black to the Mothman to other encounters of paranormal activity that seem to link these two. And our quick whistle-stop tour through Men in Black has definitely led us down many paths and many thought patterns that I'm sure at some point we'll revisit. On that note, we'd like to thank you all for listening, and you're listening to the Paranormal Concept Show on Paranormal UK Radio Network. Say good night, guys.
Good night, guys.